Ultimate Spider-Man issue 1 that just came out this year might be the best iteration of Spider-Man, really Peter Parker, that we have seen yet. Now, if you haven't read this comic yet, I will keep it relatively spoiler-free and I will let you know when the spoilers do come in. Now, if you don't know, I am relatively new to comics and I have been reading voraciously over the past year, and I wanted to give my perspective on this new Ultimate Spider-Man and this new take on Peter Parker, especially being relatively new to comics. Grossly speaking, just being in the comic community in different forums and different communities, I do understand that right now a lot of people have been relatively upset with the current run of Spider-Man by Zeb Wells. I haven't read any of it, so I can't really give my opinion on it, but I know most people don't think it's very good at all. And a lot of folks have put out their thoughts and comments of what we really want to see from a Peter Parker Spider-Man perspective, and I think from what my understanding and watching other YouTube videos and now reading this kind of take on Peter Parker and Spider-Man is that we are getting what a lot of people have been asking for years. Coming up are some light spoilers, but not really. I think you can even get this from the solicit. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not gonna ruin a whole bunch of stuff just yet. In this Ultimate Universe, different from Earth 616, Peter Parker is not Spider-Man. He has never been Spider-Man. In this issue, Peter Parker is about mid-30s. He's married to MJ and he has 2 young kids. Now, Peter has what appears to be a steady job at the Daily Bugle, and you can see throughout the issue is that Peter is obviously a very dedicated husband and a dedicated dad, and you can tell that he's grappling with something. He's almost in like a quarter-life crisis per se, and he doesn't know what to do. Like, he feels like he should be doing something more with his life, but he isn't quite sure what that is. This take on Peter Parker is what makes him so human, and I think this is something, again, that we can all relate to. I'm sure at some point in your life, whether no matter how old you are at this point, you've probably asked yourself, like, what is your purpose on this earth, and what should you be doing with your life? And that is exactly what Peter is asking himself, and he actually asks some help from some people around him, and we'll get to that a little bit later. The other thing that is great about this entire issue is it's Jonathan Hickman, right? And he does what he does best, and that's world building. And in this whole issue, there's not much action. We do see Green Goblin kind of explode and attack a car of someone specific, which we'll get to in a second. Now, if you're not really into that per se, and you're not into a lot of dialogue, then I can see why you may not really like this issue, but we are setting up a lot of stuff, I think, and there will be a lot more action to come. I really like the dialogue. I think it was great. There's just a lot of human aspects in all of this, and we'll talk about some of that in spoilers in just a second. Of course, Marco Checchetto's art is absolutely amazing. Again, some people may say that it was a waste, just given the fact that there's not much action happening in this issue, but I still think it's great to look at. The other thing I really like about this issue is that if you're brand new to comics or if you're brand new to Spider-Man, this is a new #1 in a totally new universe. And I think this is a great way and a great jumping off point for someone. And I also think it's great from the standpoint of, like, you don't need to really necessarily know what happened in the last Ultimate Universe, although I'm sure that might be helpful. And there was Ultimate Invasion before this, which I didn't even read, and honestly speaking, I don't think that you need to read it either, because there's a prologue beforehand that kind of gives your overall what is happening in this universe and what's happening in this story right now. Of course, if you did read it, it may be helpful to give you some more context and some clues, but personally speaking, I felt like I didn't miss out on anything. Let's get into a little bit more specifics into the issue and what I really like in terms of the different relationships and the world building that we see. So there are spoilers moving forward if you haven't read this issue yet. So in the prologue, it does tell you that the maker basically created this universe where he was trying to stop all the heroes from actually ever happening. So again, that's why Peter Parker has never been Spider-Man. From my understanding, Thor has never been Thor, and so on. And so the maker is basically an evil version of Reed Richards, and you would not get that from this issue. I've just done some other research. In doing all of this, the maker put out a terrorist attack and blamed it all on Iron Man / Tony Stark. With that being said, there's not many heroes around, but that might change as we get through the basic synopsis of this issue. As Peter goes into the Daily Bugle for work, you can tell that something is on his mind, and you see that someone's yelling for him from Parker, and you would think that it's J. Jonah Jameson. However, he's actually not yelling for Peter, he's yelling at Ben Parker, who in basically every other universe, we see that he's not around. And you can tell that he's also has a pretty good relationship with Peter, and you can also tell that there's a very good relationship between JJJ and Peter, and he almost acts like a very father figure in addition to Ben has, which I think is a great contrast into, you know, what we've seen JJJ and Peter's relationship be in other universes. So you can tell that something is very heavy on everyone's mind, and that's because they're going to a memorial for the terrorist attack that quote unquote Iron Man put out, but we know it was the Maker. And unfortunately, in this universe, instead of losing his uncle, Peter lost his Aunt May. The biggest thing that we see is that JJJ and Ben end up leaving the Daily Bugle because they're looking to make some changes in the Daily Bugle, and now the person running it happens to be the Kingpin, and we know that he's probably going to censor and put into place a lot of things that JJJ and Ben are not going to do. So they basically leave the Daily Bugle in kind of like a Jerry Maguire style, and their plan is to start their own newspaper, and they're not necessarily going to tell the truth, but they decide that they're not going to lie. So we'll see where that goes in the future. In this issue, again, there's not much action. We do see the Green Goblin though at one point in just a couple of panels, and he attacks a car, and that happens to be the Kingpin's car. So there are some thoughts, and I want to get your thoughts as well as to who the Green Goblin might be. Now, at the memorial, we also see Harry Osborn, who gives a little bit of a speech, and he's talking about the loss of his father. So now Norman does not exist in this universe either. So who would typically be the Green Goblin, being Norman, is not in there. So that leaves that open. And that, I think, makes it interesting because I'm not entirely sure that it's Harry. It very well could be Harry Osborn, but in this issue too, you can tell that there's some dialogue between MJ and Peter that they don't know who Harry is. Like, they didn't go to school together. MJ has only talked to him in passing, and it seems like Peter has never talked to him at all. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward. We can probably anticipate that there's going to be some more interaction between them. You could tell though that Harry is upset with the terrorist attack and losing his father, basically. So there is potential for him to be the Green Goblin. However, I do think there is potential to have either the Green Goblin be potentially Ben. I think that's highly unlikely. However, it very well could be JJJ. I would love to know, what are your thoughts and who do you think the Green Goblin is going to be? Put them down below in the comments, and I would love to kind of go back and forth to see what people think on that. Just overall though, I think this is a really great issue. I can see why people might be upset with it, in that there wasn't a lot of action, you know, it was just a lot of dialogue. I get that, but I think we're gonna have a lot more of that moving forward. But at the end of this issue, we see the thing that Peter has been thinking about that's kept him up all night, and basically he has gotten permission from Ben to really go after what he wants, as well as MJ, who's there to support him in doing whatever it is that he wants to do to like get more out of his life. And so we find that he has this orb that was given to him, and it happens to come from basically a holographic version of Iron Man, who's like 6 months in the future, basically saying that he's gone back and he has gotten that radioactive spider that was supposed to bite Peter, but never did, right, in this universe. And now he has it, and it's in this orb, and it's up to Peter to allow himself to choose to get bitten or not. Really, the biggest thing in all of this, which I think is great, is that in past universes and what we know of Spider-Man, the typical story is that he is this hero who has this great responsibility now because he was bitten, and he has these powers, and he has this sense of responsibility because of what happened to his Uncle Ben. And in this story, it's opposite, right? In this story, Peter has always had that in him. You could tell that he's grappling with that, right? He's always wanted to have this greater responsibility, and he's always kind of wanted to be the hero, and he just doesn't know how to go about it, right? He's just a normal, everyday guy, and he wants to make a change in the world, and he wants to be able to help and to do those things. And now with this opportunity presented to him from Iron Man with this radioactive spider to give him these powers and to be this superhero, and basically he lets it bite him, and we see basically a silhouette of a Spider-Man at the end of the issue. So there's really no Spider-Man action in this entire issue until the end, and that's really all we get to see. But I think to me, that is the biggest thing and the biggest draw, is that, right, we're always attracted to Spider-Man because he always does the right thing, even if it doesn't benefit himself. And we just kind of always assume that he has taken on this moniker of great responsibility because, again, what's happened to him in the past. In this universe, he's always had that within him. He's always been that hero, that person, and now he has that opportunity to do it. And I think, again, that's just something that's just so human, and we can connect 2 so much. So let me know again who you think Green Goblin's gonna be, what you thought of this issue if you read it. Put that all down below in the comments. And if you want to be part of this great Marvel community and just learn as much as you can and just be in a group that's positive about Marvel around this channel, please hit that subscribe and like button down below. That would mean the world to me. And until we see each other in the next video, Excelsior.